Hey there everybody, welcome to part 2. Now part 1 was just smoothing out the texture of my ceiling, and so that is a optional step for you if you want to do it. I don't want you to feel like you missed out if you didn't do part 1. This is the first video where I'm going to be painting, so if you like the texture and the finish of your ceiling but just want to add the clouds, then this is where you start. Now this is almost ready for painting, but first I need to prime it because this is a fresh layer of drywall mud, and you can see over here on this far edge where it's a little bit darker, that's where it's still wet and it's been drying all morning. I had the ceiling fan running trying to dry it out in a hurry so I can get this video up. But things are going nicely. I'm really liking the smoothness of the ceiling. So my next step is to put a primer. So the right primer is, I feel like it's my responsibility to tell you to use a PVA drywall primer. And so I got a good shot of that while I was at the store this morning, but I did not buy that because I'm just going to use leftover paint at my house. So I'm being honest with you, I'm not going to buy that for my ceiling because I just use flat paint and make sure that the first coat is thinned out, it's kind of watered down so that it can soak into the surface and not be prone to peeling off. So it's important that it's flat, or at least a very low sheen, because you don't want a stretchy rubbery surface on top of a powdery finish like this. Now also, I did not sand this. I don't sand my drywall ceilings. I just scrape them and float them, and you can see in the first video what I mean by that. So this doesn't have an extreme layer of dust on it, but it is just dry mud. So it's hard for paint to bond real tightly to that. I want it to soak in. That's why I thin it out. I don't need to thin it out real extremely. I'll show you how I do it, but I just have Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams has a paint that's, you know, more of an economy. More of an economy type paint. So Promar 200 is not their top of the line that they want everybody bragging about and buying like crazy, you know. But it works great. So this is just a bright white flat paint, and I'm just showing you so that you know what I'm using. Like I said, industry standard I think is probably the PVA drywall primer, specifically manufactured for that purpose. But I have this all over the ceilings in my house, and it still is holding up great. I tried to scratch it off and I couldn't. So this is flat. You want flat paint, and I'm going to thin it out a little bit before I put it on. I love working with cheap tools. I'm not gonna get anything fancy. I've just got this plastic tray. I'm going to pour some paint in there. I like rolling out of trays. I find that simpler way of doing a small job. You know, you're not going to see pros painting a giant side of a building rolling out of trays because they'd have to refill them every few seconds. But for this little ceiling, this is going to be great. And it's a lot less awkward than putting a grid inside of a bucket and trying to roll out of a bucket that way. So I'm just going to fill this thing up to about there. This is just a bright white. It's a very good bright white. This is their high reflective white. And it is a very good white. I'm going to use this for the clouds also because it's flat. And I want all of the paint that I use on this project to be flat. We'll get more into that later. So right now it's just the primer coat. I'm going to put this roller on a roller frame. I have to go grab one real quick. Okay, here's my roller frame, and this is a 9-inch roller frame. And again, just get the cheap one. You know, this is one small project. If you don't need it to last and last, then a cheap one's going to do just fine. They're a little bit annoying. The cheaper ones have a lot more flex, like this. This one is actually maybe a little bit tougher. I'm not sure, but really cheap tools. You know, this might have a lot of flex and make it a little bit harder for you to get even pressure as you're going, but I just don't think that's a big deal. This is a synthetic roller. Don't don't worry about getting the expensive sheepskin or any special material. A cheap synthetic roller will do just fine. Again, it's a small job, and it's not going to be a big loss to you if it's not top-notch tool quality. So then I want to use a pole. Please use a pole if you, even if you can reach the ceiling, without a ladder. A pole is still good just to save your energy. You can get a lot further, a lot faster, because you can do long strokes by using a pole. Now, if you don't have one of these fancy schmancy roller poles, and these are adjustable in length, but I only need the, well, screen's flipped around on me. I only need the shortest setting because this is a short ceiling. But if you've got a high ceiling, these are handy dandy tools to have. A broom handle has the same thread size. So if you don't have one, just use a broom handle. I've broken many broom handles. They are weaker. They don't have this more sturdy metal, but it's just a broom handle, and it'll get the job done for you. Okay, so now let me put this up on the ceiling, and I'm going to start painting. I almost forgot. You got to thin this out a little bit, so I'm pouring some water in there. Not a ton. That's just a thin layer of water on the top, and I'll give it a little bit of a stir. Definitely would be easier to do this in the bucket than in this pan, but I've got a pretty large batch in my bucket, and I don't want to thin it all. I just want to thin this layer. So I'm going to stir carefully, because that's trying to splatter up off the edges there. Here we go. This method seems to work a little bit better. Pull it away from the edge. Oh, that's why we have drop cloth. Okay, that's good. See how that's real runny paint. That's a good primer coat. That's going to soak in. Now again, this is all over my house. The finish is a couple years old, and I can't scratch it off without gouging into the drywall mud. So I can at least stand by this particular paint being used as a first coat on drywall mud. But again, I didn't sand it. That's not sanded. There's not like a layer of dust. I actually think I did sand some areas. So even so, I think as long as it's watery like this, you're good to go. PVA primer has a lot of additives in it, I think, maybe that's just all sales. Maybe it's just marketing. I honestly don't know. Okay, so you can see how I'm using the edge of this pan to get this roller soaked. So when you're using a roller, if this is your first time using a roller, make sure it's saturated before you start using it, because if you only have it halfway, see on the end how you can see that it's not all the way saturated with paint. And that's not such a bad thing, but what I want to be careful of is that I don't put a little bit of paint in it and then smash it flat on the ceiling. It starts to kind of dry and keep your roller in a flat shape, and so then it doesn't squeeze out a lot of paint on the ceiling for you anymore after it gets real flat. Maybe you've had that happen. So what you do is always make sure it's saturated with paint. Don't let it run all the way out when you're rolling on the ceiling. Okay, so then if I need to take a break, this is a lot simpler than, to me it's a lot simpler than trying to hang it on the edge of a bucket somewhere. I just lay this down, it's easy to lay that down. This is why I like working out of a pan. It's just me, but hey, it's up to you, it's your project. Alright, time to paint the ceiling. Okay, now, let me put this paint in a place where I'm not going to step in it. So I'm doing exactly what you saw. I'm just rolling the roller into that pool of paint and using the pan to get the excess off. Okay, now look at how I'm rotating this. you can see if it's going to drip like crazy. You can rotate it like this so that it doesn't, but you'll see drips trying to spill off of it. And if you roll it a few times on the edge of the pan, then you should be able to get it to where it's all soaked into the roller and it's really not dripping that crazy. Now this, I also didn't mention that this I think is a 1/2 inch nap. That's a pretty thick roller nap. It might be or like 3/8 inch. It might be a 3/8 inch, maybe a 1/2 inch. So it's a pretty good size roller. You know, they get them down to like a 1/4 inch or something like that. Anyway, you can turn it a few times like this, and to roll without splattering and dripping nearly as much, you can put the roller on the ceiling, and just like I did with the drywall trowel, instead of pulling it right here at 90 degrees, I angle it. So see this angle that I'm rolling? I'm trying to roll toward you so you can see the angle now. Go this way. I don't want you to do X patterns all over your ceiling, but I just want you to see how I've got the roller at this angle so that it's smearing while it's rolling that initial contact. And so that will make it not smear, or not smear, I didn't mean smear, that'll make it not splatter nearly as badly. What happens is, you know, as all of the little fibers of the roller stick to the ceiling and then pull off the back side as it's rolling, then it flicks them off the trailing end of the roller. But if you're doing a little bit more of this wiping style of rolling, then it's kind of smearing it like a paintbrush instead of just rolling it, and you don't get as much splatters. But I do have a drop cloth under me because I'm still going to drip. Okay, I'm reloading the roller. I'm going to do the same exact thing again. I'll come up here, and my initial contact will be kind of smearing it at this 45-degree angle. And the pressure, you know, light pressure makes a difference. If I put too much pressure, it really squishes that paint out, and it's more likely to drip on me. But if I start with light pressure and then gradually increase to what I need, then that's going to work better for me. Now, it's easy to forget to keep the roller saturated. So, it's singing at me. It's easy to forget to keep it saturated. You know, I don't want to just keep rolling and rolling until this won't roll anymore, because that's going to completely empty out the roller and it'll start squishing flat. So keep, you know, you can feel the weight of a roller that's loaded. So keep it loaded with paint. Go back to the paint and dip again before it gets totally emptied out. Now this is flat paint, so I don't want you to worry a whole ton about which direction you're rolling. You know, I'll roll all kinds of different directions just to try to get rid of my fat edges. And I'll try to get just the perfect amount of pressure so that I don't leave a lot of those. You know, when you're rolling, it's easy to leave a lot of fat edges where it's squishing out of the edge. Now, I'll show you a closer shot. Let me roll a little closer to the wall over here. Now I've got plastic. The plastic that's on the wall is draped over the top of that black bed that you saw by my legs when I was pouring the paint. So I'm rolling over a covered area here. I've got it at that angle. Now this is where the pole is very helpful in getting this job done. I don't need to stand on that bed, and I can also just be faster because I have this wider range of motion all the way from here to there. Oh man. You can put a little bit of water in it if it's like squeaking at you all crazy like that. But this is just one small ceiling, so I'm too lazy and too much in a hurry to go and try to do something to that squeaky joint. Oh man, it bothers my ears though. Maybe the more expensive ones don't do that. I bet they do. This is interesting. It only squeaks when I roll it toward you. See, that's when it squeaks, but this way it doesn't. Squeak, no squeak. Squeak, no squeak. All right, now here. Let's go right up here so you can see. Same thing, I'm loading up my roller, nice and heavy with paint. All right, now I've got a good amount of paint in there, and let me make sure that I'm painting where you can see me. I've got it at this angle, not too much pressure. See, if I do a lot of pressure, then you're going to see fat edges. I'll show you if I squeeze it, if I push harder. Well, now I got the paint out of it, but see how it's yeah, dripping out of the edge of the roller. That's too much pressure. Light pressure keeps that from happening. And just keeping it moving too, you know. Keep turning it so that it doesn't all drip down to one spot on the roller. Now you don't have to roll with it at a 45-degree angle the entire time. I'm just showing you that method so that if you have an issue with it being particularly splattery paint, you know, some paint splatters more than others. It just kind of depends on the consistency of the paint. See, if I just go like this, I can roll it quickly. It's kind of at that angle, so when I go quickly, it's not splattering behind it a lot. But I feel like if you just grab the roller and go, you're gonna figure all this out. It's not that complicated. Now sometimes you get little paint boogers in the ceiling. I'll show you what I mean by paint boogers. Let me put this right here. You see that goober hanging right off the ceiling there? You can take your roller and just pull it sideways like that, and it'll get that little guy off, and then you can come down here and pick it right off of your roller. I'm just putting it where you can see it. See it stuck right there on the roller, and then just wipe it on something. Wipe it on something else besides the ceiling. So as you go, you know, if you see those little boogers in places, you can use that technique to grab them off of there. If it's a ceiling that's hard to reach, especially, you know. If you can just reach it with your arm, then just grab them off. You can also buy paint strainers that you just pour the paint through it. You know, you put a paint strainer around the top of the bucket, you just pour, it's just a filter to pour the paint through. That'll get rid of those before you roll them on the ceiling if there's a lot of them. Sometimes they're in brand new buckets of paint, annoyingly, but usually not. Now this is the kind of brush that you want to use. And so we'll use a couple different sizes probably as this job progresses, this project progresses. This is made by Purdy, and that's just because it's what I'm familiar with. You know, the Purdy is available and it's a good reliable brush for me, but it doesn't mean that you have to get that brand, because this style of brush is common. This is nylon polyester bristles, synthetic bristles, and it's specified on the label for all paints, so you could, you know, that means that it can be used with oil or water base. Water base is ideal. So this is the common choice for paint contracting, just to be a common cut brush. So when you use these, you know, you put the bristles in halfway. You don't dunk the whole thing in the paint so that it stays manageable for you. Now I'm going to go up here to the ceiling and just cut in those edges with this brush. Let me get to a little bit closer section. Now this is not going to be like a real thorough how to cut a straight line lesson or anything. This is just to get the primer to the edge of my corner, because I didn't want to use the roller. Sometimes you can just take the roller all the way to the edge, but in this case I didn't want to put a real thick layer of paint on this trim. I'm trying to clean up this trim work also. Okay, so here you just keep these pointed at the surface you're painting. You don't do this kind of a thing. You just keep them pointed at the surface, the bristles bend, and that gives you control of your lines. Because if your hand is like mine, my hand shakes. And so when the bristles are bent like this, my hand can shake, but the bristles stay in the same spot while my hand is shaking. But this is primer. You know, I don't need to be careful with this. When you get into the more detailed areas of your artwork, you might care about being able to control where you put that more, or if you're trying to cut in the corner with one color against another color. Here it just doesn't matter. I just thought I'd show you that technique. Anyway, these are kind of categorized by shape, these brushes. So this is an angled brush, and any brush that looks like this is going to be the right brush, the one that I am talking about. It says that it's for all paints. It's got nylon polyester bristles, and it looks like this. So because this is made by different brands, I don't want to get into telling you get exactly this certain thing, because the truth is I've used many of them. Anything that looks like this and has those bristles is going to work for this job. I think the more expensive ones, they maintain the sharp edge right here. You know, they taper to a sharper point, and they maintain that edge for longer. If the bristles, there's a certain way of doing the ends of the bristles, they kind of are split. What do you call that? Where they have frayed ends. There's tapered bristles and there's maybe flared bristles. I don't know what it is, but those kind of brushes get real poofy on the end, and usually they're cheaper brushes, or maybe they're brushes specifically for high volume. But a cut brush will come to a nice point, and you can feel when you go to the store and you get a brush like this, you can feel if there's you can see if the brush is real flared out on the end, if the bristles are like that, or if it's easy to squeeze them together tight. And these brushes in particular specify that the bristles are rigid. They are the stiffest bristles of all the brushes that they make, and that's my preference. You can try other things, but that's my preference. Okay, now it just so happens that there's some really nice clouds outside today. It just rained this morning, and so now that it's cleared up, we've got some nice happy clouds that are great models for me to show you some things about clouds to help make sense of the colors that I chose. So I'm going to get to those colors here in a minute, but I want you to see this sky. I'm going to try to hold this camera real steady right here on my leg. I just don't have that steady of hands, you know. So, okay, so look how when I put it down low, the dark objects in the frame cause the camera to let more light in. The camera is seeing that there's darkness and letting more light in so that it can see the details. But now, if I take the dark things out of the frame, the camera automatically adjusts to the light, and now it's trying to see more detail in the bright clouds. And indeed, you can see more detail in the bright clouds when you point it more directly up at the sky. Let's see if there's more up there. Let's just put it over on these, and I'll even zoom in a little bit so that we can see the effect that this has here. Okay, so you can see some really cool details in those clouds that are just rising up above Mount Eldon there. And now when I start getting more dark objects in the picture, watch the sky get brighter, brighter. And the more I point the camera down, the more those clouds lose their details. Okay, so my point is that there is high contrast between the darkness of the sky and the brightness of the clouds. And in order to block enough light that the whole cloud doesn't just wash out with bright white color, the camera has to restrict the amount of light coming in, which makes the blue sky dark. It's really high contrast. The short explanation is that the sky is much darker than the cloud. Now, I can't get paint that is brighter than pure white. So I have to make the blue of the sky dark enough to achieve the effect of that high contrast of the glowing clouds. Okay, I also want to point out before I move the camera again, the sky is darker and more violet colored up here, but then when I come down near the horizon, it's a little bit lighter and more turquoise colored. So I want to have a sky that is a little bit more on the darker and violet side. I really like that real deep, almost violet shade of blue up there. And so I got colors to try to get that look. So these are the colors that I picked out, and I've got my cans popped open here. Now I want to stress that your colors don't have to be these exact colors. This is what I really want you to understand is the relationship between these colors. But these are the exact colors that I chose, and I'm going to tell you why. So my blue, just like my video of the cloud up there. Oh man, I gotta sorry. Let's take a break and look at that cloud up there. It's floating across. Man, I love clouds. I just want to show you this real quick. If I can get this camera off of the tripod. Like, this is fun. I want to do clouds just like this on the ceiling. Yeah, look at that. And look, now that bright white's in the sky, you know, you can see if I point it just up, let me get the dark things out of the picture like this. The sky gets darker in order to show the details in that cloud. Man, I love the way that looks. Here, let's zoom in on it. I mean, this is essentially what I'm going to be painting on the ceiling. I want that effect. So you can see that in order to have that much difference between the sky and the cloud, I might need a pretty dark blue. So now the camera's going to readjust to my dark room now. And here's my color swatch right here. So you can see that I'm using this blue right here. I'm using this one. Hang on. This is the blue that I chose. So I don't want to go too extremely dark, but that one I thought was a good contrast to the white. And you can see the pure white is right here, and you can also see the white strips between those colors. So here I'm going to get a lot of contrast by using a darker blue. Okay, now back to explaining about the colors. So I know it's scary to put a color that is that dark. It's this one. And this is the color right here out of the can. I'll put this on the swatch so that you can see it's a little bit lighter when it's wet and it dries down to that darkness. And so if it's one of their stock colors, they really do a good job of matching the colors that are on these swatches. I just picked them right off of the chart. This one is called Integrity, and the number on it is P520-5. I mean, who even needs a number? It's called Integrity. You go to Home Depot. I got these at Home Depot, and the paint brand is Behr, B-E-H-R. And so that's something that's easy to come by around here. But if you just get colors that look similar to these, this system of choosing color is going to work well for you. So I got a blue that you can see when I went up to the color chart on the wall, immediately the brightest blues stick out. I mean, there's this patch in the middle of all those colors that's just the brightest blue. I go straight to that section and I get a blue that looks like it's a little bit on the violet side. Now, you don't have to get one this dark. If that scares you to put that on your ceiling, then just get a lighter one. You still will be able to have the same relationship of colors, even if you use very light, faint colors, faded colors. Your ceiling might have a different feel to it, but you can still get it to look natural, like clouds. Mine, I want it to be, bold and bright contrast, so I'm using these bold contrasting colors. Once I had this color picked, this color called Integrity, I then took that over to the color chart and started comparing it So I think what I actually did was I first picked a color that was not this one. It was a little bit darker, and then I thought at the end, I'll go a touch lighter. So in the footage, I'm taking a color that's a little darker than this one over and matching it to the other colors on the wall. But that's what I do. Once I find a sky color, I take it over. The next step is to find my shadow color. So the shadow color is called Blue Hydrangea. Like that's a flower, right? Hydrangea, or just a plant, I don't know. Blue Hydrangea. And so this is what I'm going to use for the shadow because, here, let me point that straight at the camera. It's lighter than the sky and it's more gray violet. So you want something that looks grayer and a little more violet than what the sky color is. So whatever color you land on for your sky, just think, okay, a little more gray and a little more violet for the shadow. And if you go as darker than the sky for the shadow color, it's going to make your clouds look really stormy. So I want my shadow color to be a little bit lighter than my sky to get the nice, happy, fluffy clouds. And you can see in that footage that I just now did right out the window, you can see that those clouds, the shadow on those is lighter than the blue of the sky, just like my colors. The shadow color will be against my white cloud and will still be lighter than the sky. So in my other videos, I'm trying to get the glare off of these. In my other videos, I've just mixed from primaries to get these colors. I want to make it much easier on you and me and just get the right colors already mixed. So just because you can do something doesn't always mean that it's the best way to do it. So that's my sky color and my shadow color. So then I take the shadow color over to the wall to look at it against the other options. And then I want a color that is between the shadow and the pure white. This is the ultra pure white that Behr makes. And that was available at Home Depot, but since I already have another white that's just as bright from Sherwin-Williams here at my house that I just primed the ceiling with, I'm going to just use that one. But it's just pure bright white wherever you get it. And so now I take this over to the wall. I start comparing it to the light gray violet colors because I want now a transition color. That's the next color I want. So this is my transition color. It's this middle one, and I'll show you. Here it is in just one of these little pint sample containers, and that's very convenient because you don't use a lot of the transition color. So having this little pint size amount is just perfect for a small ceiling job like this. So this is the color, and what I'm going to use that for is to make sure that I get what looks like natural light moving from the shadow to the white, because when you mix a dark color with a light color, it tends to be a little bit greener than what natural light will do when it mixes. So to change that, I just get a color that has more red in it. Now you don't have to understand all the mechanics of that. Just know that you get another color that is visibly a lot more, see how it's like the color of lilacs. Let me get this up here where you can see it. So you can see that this color, and I'm going to tell you the name of that is Lavender Memory. That is the name of that color. So there's my three colors. This is sky, this is the shadow color, and this is the transition color. This one is the most violet, this one is the most gray, and it's a little bit more violet and lighter than the sky blue. That's the system. So to recap, I just want you to understand the system. You get a blue for the sky. I'm going a little more on the violet side, but whatever blue you use, just use that as your starting point. Get a shadow color that is more gray, lighter, and more violet. Those three things are the criteria. Then get a transition color that is in between the shadow and a pure white and is also a lot more violet, because that's what's going to keep the mix from being too gray or too green. So I'm going to be using all of these colors to get nice natural looking clouds. And of course I'm using pure white. You've seen in previous videos that I've added red and yellow to my white to get to get a natural light color that contrasts with the blue. Well, pure white is going to take on the appearance of a slightly orange color when it's against this blue color anyway. And so I don't add those colors to the white anymore when I do clouds, but I do still use a transition color that helps it to look like, it still colors that white to look like natural light. So I don't want you to be confused from older videos. Oh, what about adding the red and the yellow? I think I did a lot of confusing people with that video. And so just pure white is all we need to just do some happy daytime looking clouds. If I was doing something more of an evening or morning theme, maybe more of a sunset color scheme, then I would definitely get some orange, maybe red and yellow, maybe just orange, and add it to the white. But I'm not doing that in this project. This is just some happy, fluffy daytime clouds and a blue sky, just like what's out the window right now. Okay, now that you understand the color system, go get your colors, and if you want to copy these colors, then please do so. And if you pick out your own, if you want it to be even more extreme than mine, great. If you want to make them less extreme, maybe lighter colors, then do that. That's great. And if you want me to help you determine whether those are a good mix of colors, then just post your colors for me so that I can look at them and help you to be confident that you've got a good setup of colors, a good relationship between them. Okay. So I'm going to get started putting my sky blue on the ceiling. Okay, now the next thing I'll do is map out where all of my clouds are going to be, because I don't want to just guess my way through this. I don't want to paint the whole ceiling blue, then paint half of it white, and then come back and change it because I don't like where the clouds are. No, we're going to have a plan. Okay, so this is a good way to understand a natural looking size scale, how to size your clouds. Let's look out the window again, and I'm going to put this close to my eyes, this camera. Now let's find a section of cloud out there. Okay, so there's some, let's find, oh, I like that section right above the tree. Okay, now the camera is near my eyes, and I'm going to take my fingers and size up that section of cloud. I know this seems funny, doesn't it? Just use your fingers and see how big it is. But watch what happens when I take this proportion and put it right up here against the ceiling. That's covering like a 14-inch section, maybe like 14 inches. Okay, then if I put it over here in the middle of the ceiling, now the camera's still by my eyes, my hand is still the same distance. Okay, now I'm only at like 3 inches on that ceiling. Sorry about my shaky hand there, it's getting tired. So it's only a couple inches. So the lesson here is that over here, I make the clouds bigger, and maybe keep in mind that I can easily fit my fingers around the size of a normal looking cloud out there. But the edges of my ceiling, I'll make significantly bigger clouds because this part of the ceiling is very close to my face. And so, you know, just like your hand is very big and you can put it around large distant objects when your hand is close to your face. So I'm going to make very small clouds up here in order to make my perspective look a lot more natural. Okay, let's get started mapping out clouds. Okay, now this is a 3-inch roller, just like that 9-inch roller I used to put the white primer on, or white paint on. And so you can use a 3-inch roller, 4-inch roller. There's different sized rollers. I'm actually going to use this right out of the quart can of sky color that I got. And I only bought a quart. Here is the can. And so this is, I forgot to tell you the exact kind of paint. So the sheen is flat. This is interior flat. It says the paint and primer in one. I don't know. It was like the least expensive kind of paint that I found from this brand. But let's not get too caught up in the exact brand. But this is interior flat by Behr, and it's 1 quart because I'm actually going to do a lot of clouds on my ceiling and not so much of the sky color, so I didn't buy a whole gallon. But if you feel concerned about running out, buy a gallon. You can also buy, you buy 2 quarts, it ends up being about the price of a gallon. So I can buy a second quart of this before I'm overspending. Okay, so what was I doing? I've got a 3-inch roller, and I'm going to put that right in here. And look, because of the size of it, I can just dunk it right in this quart can. And this is a good way to make a mess too, but if you want to do something a little bit easier and cleaner, just put it in a pan, just like I did with the white. But I'm actually going to paint the negative space in between the clouds. Getting my mind off of the clouds themselves has a way of helping me to do more natural shapes and placement of the clouds. So I'm just going to paint the areas that I want my blue sky to be rather than paint the clouds, and I'll leave the white paint behind in between, and then I'll work on the details after I get them put in place. Okay, so I'll go up here, and I'm thinking that I want 2 large areas of clouds that are kind of splitting apart. So let me grab my little ladder here. More of a stool really than a ladder. I'm going to put clouds here, sky here, not cloud. See, I'm still thinking clouds. Hopefully this roller won't drip so much once I get it loaded up with paint, just like that other one. Look how dark that is. Man, that's crazy dark. But I really think it's going to be better for it. I'm going to move some stuff out of my way here too. Let me move this white so that I don't step in it. It helps to have a scrap board when you're working with a small roller like this. Get some kind of a scrap so that you can do this. Just roll it on there a few times, then it won't drip so bad on you like it just now did on me. That was not the best way to do that. This is good right here, just have a scrap piece of material, and then it, just like the other roller, it saturates the roller and evenly distributes it so it's not all just dripping down into one end of the roller and making a big mess on me. Okay, so I'll be constantly going back to this can down here in that board that's off of the camera right now. Okay, I want to do a big zigzag line across this. I'm going to go like 1, 2, 3, something like that. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's go this way. Now watch, I don't need to make sure that I cover this all up, because that right there is actually big enough to be a cloud. Remember the finger test? It was just little. So I'll just leave that there. Here, I'll even do another one. Here's another one. Let's make another one. Okay, and then we'll go kind of over this way. I'm thinking a big fat line that turns that way. Now, I don't think I mentioned that the reason I'm doing flat paint everywhere is because the shadows of the texture that's left, I smoothed out the ceiling, but not perfectly. So flat paint, you don't have as dark of shadows, and you also don't have as bright of reflection, the glare of other lights reflecting on the ceiling. So the contrast is lower and the whole paint job looks smoother. And I feel like it's easier to get three-dimensional depth with flat paint because of that. Okay. I'm gonna go this way. And we're just gonna paint that as close as I can to this ceiling fan. Now, in case you're wondering, why didn't I just use this paint directly on the ceiling? If I wasn't going to use any kind of a special primer, why not just use the blue? Well, the reason is because the blue is my sky color, and I just have a little bit of it. That's why. I'm not going to do more coloring than more painting than I have to with my important colors. Alright, then I'm kind of thinking we go over this way. And I'll angle my roller. See, I can kind of smear it across. I'm putting it at that 45-degree angle so I can just go like this and it doesn't splatter and drip. I'll come this way, leave another cloud or two. I'm not worrying about the exact shapes of those clouds, just kind of sizing them up. Right here. And then I'll kind of turn this line and go this way. So it's like kind of like the letter Z, just a 1, 2, 3 across my ceiling. Get more paint. I've just got a big puddle of this paint on this board because this roller is so small. It doesn't put a huge amount of paint on this board so that it's puddling and running off the edges. It's a very small roller, so I don't really need a tray for something that's this small. I can just roll it around in this little puddle of paint. Trying to avoid standing on this bed here. Alright, this will be sky in here. Much faster than brushing. Alright, I'll just leave some white patches there. Who knows, maybe those will look like some interesting clouds. Okay, now, in other videos I've talked about natural split patterns. So I want the sky to be kind of splitting apart. Well, when you make a split pattern, you make a zigzag line, and then wherever the joints, the bends in that line are, you make other lines going off of that. So I'll make a line coming off this, and then at the other end right there, I'll do the same thing. I'll make my blue sky. The clouds are going to be splitting apart right here, showing the blue sky. So this come off this way. Okay, let's get some more of this blue paint here. Having a method to this really can help, because it's hard to visualize the bigger picture. Just being able to kind of do it robotically by some kind of a logical method can be a big help to your mind that feels overloaded by thinking, you know. Okay, so right now I'm just making this line come off, just kind of scribbling around as I make this line zigzag toward the edge of the ceiling, leaving white spots in between it. Now you can see already that I've got some, here let me move out of the way, I've got some white patches appearing right there, like some big clouds that are kind of next to each other. And look at that, I'm looking at the viewer on the camera, and I'm really liking that bold blue behind me. Remember, this isn't a dark ceiling, it just has a dark blue on it, but a large percentage of the ceiling is still white. So you don't have to be too freaked out by a dark blue if you're not going to make a lot of the ceiling that dark. And a dark color that's well done, still a great looking ceiling. Okay, so in here I might just divide this cloud up a little bit. Let's make this a couple of clouds. This sky comes in here. That's a little cloud, and then this will come in here. There's some more sky showing through right there. So now I've kind of got a 1, 2 clouds right there. And you know what, I'm going to move the camera over so you can see the other side now. This is the other end of my big zigzag line. So it goes 1, 2, and then 3 toward the wall. And I didn't finish it toward the wall, so that's what I'm going to do now. That's my main large area of sky, will be the space in between my cloudy areas. See, by doing this method, I can avoid having the polka dot effect of evenly distributed clouds everywhere. Oh, but that kind of looks cool, having a cloud. See, cool things happen by accident. I'm gonna leave this. This is a little cloud in between 2 big ones. Cool things happen by accident with this method is what I meant to say. I wanted to finish that sentence. Because I'm not thinking about the cloud, I'm just thinking about completing my line of sky. You know, these kind of random looking clouds will end up accidentally popping up, taking shape. Okay, now I don't want to have this big line across the middle of my ceiling be the exact same width everywhere. So I'm going to choose one part of it, and I'm going to make that part just on that side of the ceiling fan. I'm just kind of imagining it like this. Remove this bucket of paint. So over here, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to make it a lot bigger and fatter right here. A lot more blue sky showing here. This part of the line. And I'll just do a messy job so that maybe some little clouds will show up in there. But I do want to have at least one part of my ceiling be mostly blue and another part of the ceiling be mostly clouds, so that I don't have the evenly distributed clouds everywhere, because that, you know, looks a little bit like a wallpaper to me. Just a repeating pattern to me just doesn't look quite as natural, although I have seen very consistently repeating patterns across our sky here. And I think if I painted that, no one would believe it. Okay. Make that part bigger. I'm just fattening up this section of sky. That's all I'm really focusing on. I'm not trying to do any special artwork at the moment to make a cloud look like a cloud. I'm just fattening up this area of sky. And I like this area right here. This looks like a cloud, so I'm going to separate that a little bit. Bring that in here. Here we go. I like that. I want a lot of cloud on my ceiling. I want it to be a big, dramatic light bursting through the edges of those clouds. I want big clouds to show it. So I definitely need to leave some of these sections white. Okay, so I think I'm thinking about this. I think I'm thinking about this. It's a good way to say that, isn't it? Wherever I see a corner, wherever I see a corner of the blue, that's an area where I can make my splitting effect of the clouds splitting apart. So here was kind of a corner, and so I just brought it that way. Now this step is just mapping out where clouds are going to be. Just giving my imagination something to start with. I'll just kind of leave that area maybe, or should I do it? I don't know. I think I want to see a lot more blue in one of these areas. It's starting to look kind of evenly distributed. You don't want that. I'm going to take an area that already has a lot of blue and even give it more. The way you kind of randomize something is not by going to the spot that doesn't have it and adding it, but giving more to what already has. If that makes sense. He who has, even more will be given to him. Just like the old scripture. All right, that looks cool. I like the way that looks. Now I think what I'm going to do is paint a corner blue. None of my corners are blue. So to finish it up, I'm going to take that corner over there. Blue corner. It's really handy having a camera pointed at your job too. If you've got a camera laying around that has a LCD screen like this one, man, does it help to see your whole picture shrunk down where you can understand the entire layout of it. That's helped me so many times, putting videos on YouTube and having to see my work shrunk down into a smaller picture has showed me so many errors. Like with faces, making faces, I shrink them down and I'm like, oh man, I really made that nose big or that face small or something like that, Same with this big cloud ceiling. Being able to see it small helps me understand if I like the entire composition of it. How can I bring this out a little bit more? I'm really liking my blue corner. Now I still have more than, I've got at least 3/4 of a can left, even after doing all that blue on the ceiling. So yeah, I just don't see myself using up more than 1/4 of blue in this project, just to give you, context of how much paint you might need for that. If you're only doing the ceiling, if you want to bring it down on the walls, maybe you have to decide. Yeah, I think I'd like to see that corner be blue too. Okay, let's paint that out. Alright, cool. See, now this, remember my fingers, you know, testing the size of the cloud, that is way bigger. So that's like, you know, one of those big clouds that looks like it could turn into a rain cloud at that size. So I just need to remember that that represents a very big cloud. If I want it to look similar, like far away and in 3D, like that sky out there. Oh man, you gotta see these clouds. I love these clouds. When it starts getting later in the day, you get these, look. You can just see. This is the effect we're gonna do. See how you can just see the light popping through all the individual puffs on the right edge of that cloud. You know, let me put it more up at the sky so you see a little more. Let's zoom in on that cloud. That's the exact effect that we want. We want it to look like light and not just paint. That's why that transition color. Do you see the same relationship in those clouds that we just picked out? There's the blue, there's the grayer, lighter violet shadow. Then there's the even more violet area that's right between the light and the shadow. And even if that's kind of hard to see, I can promise you that it's there. Man, I love clouds. Like this. Right there. And then I'm going to make it go right here. That's my go-to split pattern right there, like the two edges. All right, cool. So, in the end, you can see I've got a blue corner, cloud corner, and then that corner is blue, that corner is just cloud. So I'm trying not to have like a symmetrical room, you know, with every corner being a cloud and then the blue in the middle. And you can see I've got much smaller clouds, or at least white splotches that might become clouds. In the middle, that'll be close to my eyes, and then my larger clouds are along the edges where they'll be further from my eyes. They'll be further from my eyes. So you're welcome to copy this exact layout, come up with your own. But I think this method works really well for laying out a cool looking sky. Here's a good view of it from the height of a person. You know, this is what we'll be looking at. So you can see that it's definitely to my advantage to have those larger clouds further away, because they naturally look smaller because they're further, and then these that are closer to the camera right up here, you know, they kind of balance out being closer but smaller. So I'm liking the way this looks. I'll kind of pan the room so you can see my layout. Got my real big cloud right there, and you can already see what looks like faint shadows, just the natural shadows of the room. So we'll get into painting light and shadow on these guys in the next video. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what everybody has to say out there and helping you troubleshoot the process until video number 3, which I'm very excited about. So I'll see you in the next video.